Hi, everyone. My name is Kristin Snowden, and welcome to my monthly webinar where I cover all things relationship related, the good, the bad, the light, the dark, kind of understanding the past, the present, and giving you the tools, the latest research, and everything that you need to know to help you have a better current relationship with other people and future relationships with others. So with that said, we are indeed in month 8 of going over Life Anonymous. It's a book that I co-wrote with an addict, kind of talking about how the 12 steps has very classic applications to all of us, whether or not we suffer from an addiction or we love an addict, we're in a relationship with an addict, or we're just also struggling with our own problems at work, problems at home, problems with relationships, problems within ourselves where we just can't quite find joy and contentment in our life. We run the gamut in this book and provide you some exercises and stories that might help you along down the path. So today we are on step 8, where we're talking about, step 8 of the 12 steps is make a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to all of them. Now, again, with everything, there's one sentence that describes step 8, but it's so much more. Let me help you understand this by helping you understand addiction and also how these are applicable to non-addicts. Addiction, as if you've ever chimed in to Dr. Rob Weiss, you will learn that addictive behavior is a symptom of what we call an intimacy disorder, because at some point in the addict's life, they maybe never felt safe or were given the space to figure out how to meet their own needs. So they did not have a healthy relationship with themselves, who they are, what they need, how to say what they mean what they say, how to respond congruently with their values and goals, not hide things, not lie, not sneak around, right? They had a poor relationship with themselves. And they also have a poor relationship with other people. They've been hurt by them. They don't want to be vulnerable. They have fears of intimacy with others. So at some point, they said, hey, I have an idea. I know how to meet my needs. I'm going to go to this external source, whether it's prostitutes, sexual acting out, pornography, a bottle of Jack Daniels, chocolate cake, shopping online, but at workaholism. But at some point, they said, look, having a relationship with myself, understanding what's going on here, I don't even know where to start with that. Right? That's very unconscious. They don't actually understand that. They don't know who they are. And having relationships with other humans is scary. It hurts me. I can't control it. But guess what I can control? How many pills I pop, how much time I spend on pornography, how much chocolate cake I want to eat. Because just for 1 second, it meets my needs just for 1 second. But of course, the nature of the acting out behavior requires them to lie, sneak around, live double lives, gaslight their loved ones, etc. So those relationships fall apart. So they have poor relationships with other people. So the 12 steps are about repairing your relationship with yourself, with a higher power, or so some kind of connection with the spirituality, whatever that might be for you, and then repairing relationships with other people. That's it, folks. If we really want to break down the 12 steps, that's what it's really about, is providing you a structured path towards repairing your relationship with yourself, a higher power, a spiritual entity, and repairing the damaged relationships of the past, of the present, and hopefully giving you the tools to continue healthy relationships through the future. So steps 1 through 3 are about owning that there's a problem, that you need help, you can't do it yourself, and that you need to accept help from others and kind of engage a community, therapist, sponsor, higher power, etc. Steps 4 through 7 are that internal work that I was talking about, right? There's some reason that you've gone to these external sources to fill some kind of void inside you, to meet some kind of need within you. So you do this personality dialysis, so to speak, and you start looking into your past, the harms you've caused, the harms you've done to yourself, to other people, the good, the bad, the light, the dark, the flaws, the traumas, the hurts, the resentments, the unhealthy patterns, right? That cycle of insanity that you kind of keep going to the same resource, you keep doing the same behavior, hoping to get a different result, but just the same old madness ensues as a consequence of it. And then, of course, step 4 through 7 also includes you engaging a community, right? An external source of, again, a sponsor, therapist, higher power, a fellowship of some kind, right? A group of safe people who are non-judgmental or can kind of say, me too, I get it. I know what you're going through. I've been there and I'm here to support you and love you through it. So those are steps 4 through 7. And step 8 is where we start taking that kind of internal focus outward. And we start learning how to repair the damage that has been done to our interpersonal relationships with other people. And start, working again more in an external relationship setting. Excuse me. Start working in a relationship setting to not just be, hold on, I'm choking on myself. To not just have values and goals be congruent within yourself, but within other people. So we were working steps 1 through 7 in becoming congruent with ourselves and who we are and how to show up and be seen within ourselves and our immediate little community. And then we are asked to go beyond that community and start repairing the relationships external to us. So steps 8 and 9 are very similar, but they're broken apart for various reasons. Step 8 is about making a list of all the people we've harmed and become willing to make amends to those people. Where step 9 complements that, it follows it up, and we'll talk about why it's separated, to make direct amends to those people, except for when to do so to make amends would injure the other person. So let's talk about that for a minute. So Scott talks about how step 8 is done in the addiction recovery world. It's pretty cut and dry. You do just what it says. You make a list. You usually pull out step 4. You see the resentments, the hurt you've caused. Of course, you include yourself in it as well, because every addict has harmed themselves in many, many different ways. And you make a list of the person or the entity that you've harmed, how it happened, what harm might have been caused, and then also your current feelings about that situation, how you feel about when you think about the harm you've caused. The important additional parts are that examining your motives. You don't want to just make amends to avoid consequences. You don't want to just make amends because someone told you to look good, to seek forgiveness. And we're going to talk about that later on. We make amends to repair our hearts, to seek shame resiliency within our heart and soul. We can't control how another person receives our amends. We don't know where they're at in their journey and where they are at in perceiving and receiving us. And then, of course, we make in that step 8 the plan for how we're going to make amends. I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but there's a difference between just saying, I'm sorry, right? Apology is kind of like a sentiment. I feel bad, I'm sorry. An amends is an action. It's, so sometimes it's actually, if I stole money from someone, amends would just be like, hey, sorry, I stole money. That probably really sucked. I didn't mean to lie to you. It's like, I stole $20 out of your wallet. Here's $20 back again. So often addicts work with their therapist sponsors, higher power, to figure out what is an appropriate amends. So if it's maybe making amends to harm they caused to someone who's no longer in their life or not on this earth anymore because they passed, it might be making a vow, praying about it, giving a donation to something or some entity that is making you feel like you're making amends for what had happened, but you can't make that direct amends to them. That's stuff that you work out with your sponsor, the list of people, how you're going to make amends, kind of checking in with your motives, making sure that they're appropriate and congruent before you move to step 9. That's really important. The second part of step 8 is to become willing. So it's really checking in again. Are you justifying it? Are you kind of following it up with an excuse, minimizing it, etc.? I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but you have to remember when you're making amends for things that you've done, for the harm that you've caused, one poor choice, one harm against you does not cancel out or all of a sudden give you the green light to do whatever. So the example that I gave in the book was that, if my husband cheated on me, and with another married person too, let's say, and I suddenly find myself alone and scared and upset. I could easily go seek out the attention and the validation from other married men around me to kind of fill that hurt and isolation or rejection or why am I not enough, and fill that hurt within me by getting that attention from another married man, because I could just tell myself, you know what, no one obviously respects marriage. Look at what just happened. A married woman just had an affair with a married man. No one respected the sanctity of my marriage. So why do I need to care about it? And then I can just go kind of get my needs met. We, unfortunately, as humans, that's often how our mind sets ourselves up for disaster. Is a bad thing happens to us, we kind of just unconsciously internalize it, and we hurt other people in our states of hurt. One of my favorite sayings is so simple but so powerful, is hurt people hurt people. When we haven't done the work to figure out what's going on within us, our behavior is often not congruent with our values and goals. We act out and respond and react to other people's choices and behaviors. And so when we're making amends to other people, it doesn't mean you suddenly cancel out the fact that they might have harmed you, they might have lied to you, cheated on you, but you're just working to focus on the facts that you kind of betrayed your own values and goals. This is who you want to show up as a person, and you did not show up that way. I can understand why I did, right? As Tammy says, it's a reason, it's not an excuse. I can understand I was hurt, I was overwhelmed. In that moment, it felt right. In that moment, it felt like it was a good thing, but I didn't really process the consequences. So remember that step 8 this is what's the tough thing. It's about the recovering addict. It's their recovery process. The steps are about their recovery process. While it is an attempt to repair external relationships and practice how to engage with other people and ask and make amends for transgressions and bad choices made in the past and present, it's still about the addict doing the action of realizing what they've done, why it's not okay, not making excuses for it, not justifying it, and determining the best steps forward from there on. But also the become willing part is about softening their heart. There's a lot of people, like for a situation like that if you've been harmed, and then you acted out, you threw something at someone, or your boss embarrassed you, so you talk crap about him behind his back or something like that. There's a party that's like, well, they deserved it, and you want to package it in that, but it's really just about, what, you have to sleep with yourself at night. You have to prepare your heart and fully understand where that came from, why it happened. And that is why step 8 is separate from step 9, because that's a really difficult process of kind of talking to sponsors and therapists about what was going on. And so let me talk about this kind of second half, is that apologizing too soon in the process after doing some kind of transgression, making a mistake, harming someone. For instance, I can't tell you how many times I work a lot with infidelity. So I work a lot with partners who've cheated. And I can't tell you how many times when they come, they've been caught, they come into the office to repair the damage that's been done. And there's just a bunch of empty promises. Yeah, sorry, I hurt you. Yeah, sorry, I lied to you. But when it is done too soon, meaning when it's done without a genuine understanding of what actually happened, what we're talking about here, right? About the betrayal, about the lying, about the gaslighting, about, telling someone who's supposed to be your teammate, your partner in life, that they're crazy and that they need to go on medication and that there's something seriously wrong with them, that they would think that you would do such thing, or if you just had sex with them more often, maybe, or they wouldn't nag so much, all that stuff. So truly understanding the level of deception, the level of harm, the level of sneaking around, the level of ignoring consequences, saying, who cares? This feels right. This feels good. I'm going to do it right now without thinking about the consequences or who I'm going to hurt. Genuine understanding of the entire context of what happened, why it happened, what was going on in your heart in the situation, and then what that other person's experience, the one who received the harm, who experienced the harm, the transgression, what that might have been like for them, fearing that their partner in life is no longer someone that they could trust, or was their whole marriage a sham because, if he was cheating for the past year, how many years was he lying and sneaking around? Did he even love me? Was this anything about this relationship real? Anyone who can die or to lie to my face so diabolically, how many other people are lying and so diabolical with how they lie to me? Is anyone real? Right? Do I have any instincts to tell who's being honest and who's not? Can I trust anyone? Right? That's a true big contextual understanding of the trauma of what we're talking about here. And then also importantly, when I'm doing the harm, to go back to that saying, hurt people, is to find out what was going on with me. What were the shame voices going on in my heart and my mind that I thought that this was okay, that I thought I'd kind of hang up and ignore the commitments and the promises I've made, my desire to be a good person, to be a good family person, or a good worker, or a good employee, or a good friend, or a good parent. So it's really important that you first assess through a step 8 all of those elements before you make an apology or an amends. And again, the difference between apology is a sentiment, I feel bad, I'm sorry it hurt you, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. An amends is doing something to correct the mistake. And sometimes you might need to ask, what would make you feel safer? What would you need to feel like I'm working to repair the mistake that I made? So let me read a couple quotes from the book to help you understand this. Amends are birthed from empathy and compassion. They are a product of deep contemplation and authenticity. Amends are without excuses, justifications, or minimizations. Amends are not an apology followed by a disingenuous promise to correct the regretful behavior, nor are they a request for forgiveness. Making amends is a restorative act. It's an opportunity to demonstrate that we have fully explored our actions and choices, examined how they have impacted others, and made the vulnerable and courageous decision to do what we can to repair the damage that has been done. I will tell you, people, we cannot have intimacy and vulnerability and connection without trust. And when we have been lied to, harmed, or even, like I said, it doesn't even have to be infidelity. When our partner behaves outside the realm of predictability, like they just come home from a tough day of work and they just rage at us and rage at the kids, or just do unexpected things where we're like, whoa, I did not see that. The best thing you can do is show them that you understand what you've done, why it's not okay, where it came from. And that literally makes them feel safe, because the idea is that, like, oh, that was scary. He came home and raged at me, or she came home or she secretly spent $10,000 on the credit card, and that felt so unsafe that she would do this under my nose like that. But if there's a full explanation of what was going on, then they can understand you better. They can rekindle and can reconnect with their instincts to say, okay, so I might be able to see this next time, right? That maybe if they start getting overwhelmed at work, or they start feeling unappreciated or disconnected, or they're not getting enough love and affection, or they're working too many hours at work, then I might be able to jump in as their partner and help them in this process so they don't engage in these, you know, maladaptive behaviors, these transgressions. So it actually gives people a feeling of safety when you give them a full amends and a full contextual understanding of how it happened, why it happened. Gosh, this must have been so scary for you. Or I can imagine you didn't like when I came home and I yelled at you, etc. It's actually the keys to rebuilding trust and connection. So let me talk about a few other things. Someone actually is talking about, what about the people that have harmed us? Narcissistic abuse. This is exactly the question that I get for non-addicts reading this book. There is a really fine line between having empathy and compassion for other flawed human beings, right? And saying hurt people, they have addiction issues, they have medical problems. It is not creating a green light for them to continue to harm you. It is not excusing their bad behavior in any kind of way. It is also not saying that you will continue to expose yourself to that harm. So please remember that. Step 8 and 9 can sometimes be a little more elusive for the non-addicts because they themselves are not the ones usually sneaking around and lying and doing these very obviously unscrupulous behaviors, which is often, unfortunately, addicts have pretty long lists of unscrupulous behavior. So it's a little more obvious to them. But it's important to remember that the more we lean into understanding the ways that we are flawed, that how all the various ways that we fall short, that we might have acted outside of our nature, our values, our goals, and maybe in response to being lied to, maybe in response to being betrayed, in response to that narcissistic abuse, maybe we sought revenge, or we screamed out expletives and, you know, emasculated another person and said words that were poisonous and hurtful that we don't want to do, we don't want to say, that we've maybe hurt others outside the relationship as a consequence of our hurt, of our fear, of our being overwhelmed constantly from that traumatic event. Maybe we've abandoned and can't show up for other people, our children, because we're in our own state of abandonment and fear and just trying to put out fires over here. It isn't hard to see that we fall short and we struggle. And it actually can be more empowering when you own the way that you've fallen short, when you own the ways that I wanted to show up this way, I wanted to respond this way. These are the reasons why I wasn't able to. And these are the people or the entities that I need to make amends to because as a consequence of it. So an example that I gave is in my own marital struggles, I was just in this victimhood of being lied to, hurt. And I was so overwhelmed by it. I couldn't see beyond my hurt and my pain. And by the way, there is a time and a season for that, everyone. I want to validate that. There is a time where we have to kind of be in our hurt and our struggle and our trauma and our victimhood to acknowledge this isn't okay. People don't get to treat us like this. This is never going to be okay. And I never want to live like this again. And I need to rekindle my instincts to keep myself safe and work through my traumas and move to a healthier place. But the act of a step 8 of owning how we fall short, owning how we can be flawed as well, in spite of the way that we've been victimized, can help us move from victim to victor, from anger over that transgression to empathy of understanding, like, we all kind of suck, we all fall short. Doesn't mean I need to expose myself to other people's harm, or their lack of boundaries or their lies, but I can have empathy for the human condition of struggle and help you move from shame to self-compassion. Sometimes in my groups at my treatment center, I play this scene in 8 Mile So 8 Mile was this movie with Eminem in it. If you guys know, he's a white rapper, and it kind of was loosely just based on his life, apparently, where he was this white rapper. And so the odds were against him. He was in Detroit. He felt like there was kind of the reverse racism, where everyone made fun of him for having dreams for being a rapper. There was this other gang rapper that was kind of would beat him up. He was humiliated. He lived in a trailer park. His mom was, the stereotypical white trash, so to speak. And he was emotionally constantly victimized by his socioeconomic status, victimized by the fact that everyone thought he was dumb, physically abused him, abandoned by his mom. But in the final scenes of the movie, he kind of takes all that pain and he owns it and kind of says, look, what are you going to use against me? Like, these are the ways that I struggle. These are the bad things about me. These are the things that you guys make fun of me about. These are the ways that I've been hurt and I've been victimized, but you don't know me. Like, you don't know what I've gone through. You don't know my struggles. And I'm not doing the scene justification. So I'd encourage you, I have a blog on it on my website. But the idea is that we think when we own how we fall short, we own the way that we've been harmed, we own the way that we've really blown it as human beings, that's like weak, that it's a sign that we are setting ourselves up to be abused and hurt or not loved. But it's actually the most freeing thing that you can do. Because the end scene of the movie is the guy who was trying to attack him and win the rap off. Once he laid out all his flaws, once he laid out the way he was harmed and hurt and how he falls short and all his shame voices, the guy, his opposition, had nothing left against him. He had nothing left to use against him, to harm him, to abuse him. There's nothing left. When you're the one writing the story, no one else gets to write it for you. And so really, that's what I think a lot of step 8 is about. So I'm going to just close with these last couple things, is that that my hurt led me to behave in ways that didn't match my values and goals. A few of my maladaptive methods of responding were passive or direct aggression, emotional abuse, acting out of spite. I wanted blood for my injustices, and I would writhe in righteous indignation, right? That's where I was in my victimhood. I would find temporary power and control in that victimization. But unfortunately, I'm fairly sure that even the safe, supportive people in my life at that time found me difficult to be around during that season of my life. And that temporary power of kind of writhing in my anger and my righteous indignation suddenly led me to be more hurt and more lonely and more isolated. I had to learn through step 8 and 9 that I have a choice of how I want to respond. I learned that the bad behavior of others never cancels out or excuses my own bad choices or my own behaviors. Life is not a retaliatory game that somehow makes me not responsible for my own choices or my behaviors. I always have to live with myself. I have to live with the choices that I've made, regardless of what's been done to me. In my journey or others' journeys toward change, our egos are often too fragile to make appropriate amends at first. That's why this is step 8 and 9. It's not step 1 and 2. It's farther down the road when we've done this personal work, this internal work. At the beginning of our own struggles and crisis and victimhood, which is all understandable and all a part of the healing process, we're not ready to own how we might have harmed other people, the way that we're flawed. Our souls are drowning in hurt. They're drowning in rejection and shame from everything just not going the way that we meant for it to go. Our defenses are really high because we're in such fragile states, and our nervous systems are a wreck. We're unable to think or act in ways that are congruent to our values and goals. However, the more that we try to humble ourselves, clean up our side of the street, and realize that we're all struggling in various ways, that's that empathy and compassion, the more likely we'll free up our soul and kind of open up our heart to acknowledge our part in what our lives have become. So it's Step 8 and 9 are less about repairing the damage that we might have done and more about softening and our hearts and expanding our capacity for empathy and compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. I use the example of shame. Of sarcasm. Making amends has become an important part of my life because I do swing over to the narcissistic kind of righteous indignation, highly defensive type personality. So making amends is like that way I kind of push myself through that discomfort. So I was saying that when I don't want to make amends, it's usually a symptom of some kind of shame issue that I need to dive into. So for instance, I hold deep shame and hurt around how sarcastic and sharp-tongued I can be with my loved ones. So when I do that, when I act out, I use that tone, I say that thing that it's like, ugh, I try to make amends right away. I partially make amends because I love them and I feel regretful that I hurt them with my words or my tone, but I also make amends to validate that what I did was not okay. So part of my amends comes from an internal desire to call myself out on what I've done so I don't get sucked into that vortex of deep shame, because I know that if I don't clear that up, the shame that, being sarcastic and acting out of character and doing a hurtful thing to my loved ones will just suck me into that vortex of more shame, and shame begets more shame. And so the best way to get out of that vicious dark cycle is to kind of own it in that way and speak it out. So it's just some final steps that I want you to remember. I talk about in my book, I give you some examples about how to develop self-compassion, kind of things to remember when you are making amends or when you're trying to develop empathy with other people and other repairing relationships. Remember that you cannot change the past and you cannot control others. You can only own what is yours, accept the consequences for your choices, and when you know better, do better. Step 8 and 9 do not release you from guilt, or you were not going to suddenly receive forgiveness from others. Maybe you do, sometimes you don't. You just have to speak the truth, only the facts, no excuses, and make amends without wounding another person further. So I think there's going to be a lot of questions from all of you about, I've been the victim, how do I work step 8? And I'm open to that. But I'd really encourage you to I err on kind of owning how much I fall short and my character flaws, because that keeps me over there. It just keeps me from that righteous indignation, from that highly defensive, I feel small, so I puff up my chest and pretend to be bigger and better than everybody. It keeps me even keeled. Some people will err on, I feel valueless, I feel like nothing, I want to disappear from this world. And so that might impact the way that you do step 8, but let's talk about that. And that is everything on step 8.
It's great stuff. And I did put the title of the book, Life Anonymous. You can hold it back up again, but it's, yes, and it's available on Amazon. We have a link to it also on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. under the resource tab. But you said in passing, you said personality dialysis. And I had this, I mean, that is like a meaty quote to me, because I was like, oh my gosh, that is what we're doing, is we're detoxifying, like dialysis does, with cleansing the blood. The steps help us cleanse our personality. You talked about repairing relationships, and I thought some of them are repair, but some of them we're just clueless on how to have good relationships. So it is a learning process for us to learn how to be in relationships in a healthy way. I really appreciated what you talked about with kind of the revenge, anything where it's, but you did, when there's a but, like I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry about this, but I want you to, like, that's really not the point. And I do appreciate that step 8 is separate from step 9. So all we have to do is make the list. We'll take care of who we're going to make those amends to and all of that. but everybody needs to be on step 8, and then we'll see who needs to be on step 9. But right now, it's, just, it is making, we did a fearless and searching moral inventory. So now we're going to make a fearless and searching, inventory of who we need to make amends to. I really appreciate too, I was thinking about in recovery, I will say, I owe you an amends. Like, I need to apologize. I don't say I'm sorry, da 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 da. I'll say I'm sorry if I bump into somebody at the grocery aisle. I mean, that's when I say I'm sorry. But when I'm making an amends, there's a specific language that I'm using, and we'll talk about that at 9. But the quick I'm sorry because I want to get this behind me, and particularly if it's tied to but you did, like, it's just ineffective. So being really clear, this is one time when compartmentalizing and just looking at step 8 and not worrying about step 9, but just get it on the paper and you'll get a chance to review it. We'll talk more about step 9 later, but it is the dialysis. It is the opportunity to cleanse. I want it, regardless of who does what to me and how they wrong me. I want to be a certain type of person. I want to show up in a certain way. And when I let my reactions, dictate and I do something, I appreciate that the steps have given me a way to clean all that up. So and when you use righteous indignation, I use that because, like, if I'm in righteous indignation, like, I know I know I need to be looking at what's going on because, there's hurt and there's all of this, but when I'm in right, and I use that term, when I'm in righteous indignation, I'm in trouble. So
It's my middle name.
yeah. So the next question is, what do you do when you are working through your hurt, but the essay is not showing as much growth? Do you support or continue to work on self? That's a great question.
It is the eternal question when you love an addict, right? And they are not exactly moving at the pace. And you can imagine, right? That's almost 100% of the time because you're already kind of the higher functioning, more emotionally intelligent person in the relationship. So you will probably move along faster in the growth and healing process than your addict partner. So that's partly empathy that you can be practicing, that while you kind of started farther down on the line, farther down the path. So I kind of started many paces ahead of you. That might help to kind of be checking in with the pace. Sometimes clients, that's why addicts and partners, I often think, need to be in couples counseling with people who do know addiction recovery. They can be in contact, meaning the couples therapist can be in contact with the individual therapists and kind of assess, are they making progress? Are they showing, we've been doing addiction recovery for so many years, or walk with people through it, that we kind of see a healthier pace and when someone's just stagnant or when someone's just going backwards, right? So I would check in with your support community, your Al-Anon community, or whatever S-Anon community, and figure out how you continue down your path of growth, but do still check in with his or her path, where your sex addict partner, your addict partner is on his or her recovery path. That's not something to minimize or something to ignore. If he or she's not doing the work, you can't do the work for both of you. So
yeah, I was thinking too, John Taylor on one of his webinars talked about, it's okay to give the voice to, I know this is what I'm looking for from you, and I know that you're not able to do that yet, but I just want us to have the vision of, at some point, this is what I'm hoping for. So it acknowledges that the essay isn't there yet, but it also gives hope for what the future could be. And sometimes, working with a couples therapist, you may get practical steps for how to get from where you are right now to that future thing. But, I think as human beings, and unfortunately, I see it with addicts who absolutely dig in their heels and go, nope, not going to do it. Nope. But how sad is that as a human being to just go, no, I'm good enough? Or I get this a lot too. They're so afraid. I mean, I think it's the shame and the fear and everything else that they refuse to work on self. But, as a human being, I'm fortunate that I had the 12 steps to help me learn to grow. But I, don't we all want to be on a personal growth, journey? Don't we want to continue to see that we're changing, rather than just, getting stuck? So I love that you're going, I still want to work on me, and, and support this other person too. But I agree with Kristen, you can't do the work for them. So what are some 12-step programs you can recommend for those with porn addiction? My husband is investigating options, but not sure what is recommended. On sexandrelationshiphealing.com, all spelled out under the resource tab, you'll see all the 12 steps. And that includes, partner support too. The prodependence.org is now, there are some meetings for that, specific and separate from those on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. But we also have a work group starting in September. That's on seekingintegrity.com. You'll see it. But there's a 6-week work group for those just with porn addiction. So we have the sex and porn addiction 101 level 1 that starts in September, but we also have a new group that is just for those that have not had physical contact. So it's not escorts, etc. It's just, or an affair. It is truly just online. And that may be a good foundation piece for him as well. And all of the drop-in groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, which there's another men's group tomorrow. And then Friday morning, Troy Love has his. All of those have both, sex and porn addicts. So your husband could start with those as well. So other comments on that? I know I have all these resources because all these,
No, SPA, there's Sex and Porn Addicts Anonymous. So
yeah. All of those are listed on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. So I think somebody put something in the chat. So
yeah, I mean, you can summarize it. It's a comment that people often make regarding step 8 is thinking that if you've been traumatized, you owe the person who's lied or hurt you an amends. You don't. When someone has harmed you, hurt you, crossed your boundary, that is what they've done to you. I'm just saying that our world is made up of flawed human beings. I think one of the best examples that I came up with when I'm in the recovery process, it's looking at what is getting in the way of me having healthy relationships with myself or other people. So I'm not saying you have to make amends to everybody and everything across the board. It's looking at where you're getting stuck. What's getting stuck? So one of my friends who was in recovery was talking about how he was trying to figure out what to make amends for. So he was saying, I have this memory of my mom physically abusing me. She had her knee on my neck and she was shoving my ADHD medication down my throat, screaming at me like, take it, take it, take it. So when I was in step 8, I was really struggling with how to make amends when I have this memory of my mom and how she harmed me. And this doesn't apply to everybody. This was just his particular journey with his sponsor. So please don't hear that this is your story and what you have to do. But he processed with his sponsor. While I don't need to make amends for that, I mean, that wasn't okay. That's never okay. That's physical abuse. And mom should have helped him feel safe, not scared. But he's like, I still had to own that, the day before that, I was kicking down every single trash can in the neighborhood, shattering glass all over the street. The week before that, I was getting suspended from high school for getting in a fight. And just a few hours before that, I was calling my mom every expletive in the book to hurt her and upset her. So this step 8 is really, really hard for non-addicts, definitely who've been victimized, because I think they often want to hear, you need to accept, you need to own, Rob would always talks about that. The worst thing about codependency is that idea that you're a co-addict, that you caused any of his or her addictive behavior, which we know is not true. You don't owe amends for any of that. Our addict partners had a million different options of how they wanted to behave and react in their relationship and they chose to lie, sneak around, live double lives. I'm just saying, when you are in your own personal personality dialysis, trying to own, okay, I want to be the best person I can be. I want to learn shame resiliency skills. What has been getting in the way of that? What are the relationships that have gotten in the way? What are the things that I look back and I'm like, ew, that didn't feel good the way that I dealt with that. I didn't like the way that this happened. Those are your lists of, making amends, so to speak.
And that's such a good example of, like, no, you don't owe an amends for that, but for this stuff you do. And I hear, unfortunately, too often where there's physical violence. So, when you talk about hurt people, a betrayed partner is hurt. And if in their reaction to the hurt, they have, been physically violent with the addict, that's never okay. That's not justification for hurting, someone. If they have, as a retaliatory, gone out and told everybody, to try to, I'm going to get even with him. He's hurt me, so I'm going to go tell everybody. And, I mean, one partner made him stand up in front of church and tell everybody that he had done that. And I'm like, that's just like cringeworthy to me. And you can say, well, sure, he just, he does he deserve it? I don't know. But would that be the person I want to be? Not really. And so how can I take ownership of what I'm doing, and change what I'm doing and live in, like you said, it's the personality dialysis. What can I do to be the person I want? So, I mean, everybody gets to pick. You can
Everybody
you can
gets to pick.
continue to do the same things. If it's working for you, great. This is,
Yeah.
we're just sharing things, and you get to pick. And but for lots of people, there is hurt and there is burdens that they're carrying, and we're saying, here's something you might want to try. And again, you said this is step 8. This isn't 1 or 2. There's a whole process, that gets, that goes on before this. This is down the pike, not, the immediacy. So, I do not owe a personal growth journey because someone hurt me. I do not owe a person. I personally want to always be on a personal growth. I like the people that I'm involved with to be on personal growth. The people that I am really connected with are continuing on personal growth. I don't, I like somebody who's stagnant and doesn't want to grow, and particularly if they're spinning in, in a negative space, that's toxic for me to be around. So I don't find I interact with a lot of people that, are kind of stuck and don't want to. I mean, that's just me, but I need people who are challenging me to continue my personal growth.
Yeah.
And at this point, like, I'm pretty clear, like, we'll get to 10, 11, and 12 this fall, but, I'm pretty clear pretty quickly. I've hung up the phone from somebody and called them right back and said, I need to make an amends. Like, I was kind of snarky with you, and you just didn't really need that, So I know how to do that, and it's not for them. Like, they appreciate it on some level. It's for me. I'm just doing that for me, because, like, otherwise I would go to bed at night going, oh, I was not the kindest person on that one. I just don't need that.
And it's
So,
all related. Like,
yeah,
if you don't keep your side of the street clean, whatever, and by the way, it's not to the trauma person, but your street clean to all humans in this world around you, then there's this little story you write in your head that's like, you know what you've done, like, and then there's this story when it comes time to set boundaries or to have expectations from other people about what's okay and what's not okay. And I will not tolerate abuse, and I will not tolerate X, Y, and Z. You're more likely to follow through with those boundaries and not tolerate abuse or not tolerate transgressions or poor behavior from other people when you hold yourself to that same standard. If you are making yourself uncomfortable every day, trying to make amends for when you fall short, or you own when you fall short, or you own accountability for X, Y, and Z, you're going to have a pretty darn low tolerance for other people not doing that same exact thing for you. And that's why it's so important to the healing process for people who've been victimized. because the more you do it on your end and the more you go through the discomfort of that process, the more you are not tolerant and you are not okay with someone not accepting accountability and amends on their side.
So a question, advice for a 3-year dry or sober porn ex-addict, single, no relationships, living alone. That sounds lonely. That's my first thought.
Be alone.
Yeah. So, and dry, dry is different than sober. That's abstinence. So, single, no relationships. Like my heart hurts. So how can you connect in a healthy way? Okay. So I mentioned the porn addiction 101. That's going to be with a group of other people that are similar. Oh, I have another one for you. There's a new drop-in group for just single. It's on Friday nights on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Join that. There's other people. We only can heal in connection. We can't practice relationship skills with no relationships. We have to be connected to other people, even work colleagues. I mean, whatever, like we need to be in community, and it's just so much nicer anyway. I mean, COVID sure has proven that, hasn't it?
We have to fight for connection more than anything in the world. You are here. The person who put that comment in, I want to applaud you. You're definitely taking the right steps by joining us. Thank you. But people are there who know your story, who've done similar things as you have, who struggled in similar ways. And I want you to find those people and be with them and find the camaraderie that can come from those types of fellowships, communities, whatever, whether it's a spiritual setting, whether it's a 12-step setting, whether it's online support groups, they are there for you.
Yeah. And it's just so much, I was emailing with somebody and we were talking, but I could tell everything he was doing was just reading books and all of this. So it was all head knowledge. But like, if you're not getting feedback from other people and having those lenses, because I mean, with addiction, our best thinking got us into the 12-step programs. I mean, that's the reality. So having other people's insights, it changes things, and having it be, oh, me too, helps reduce shame and not normalizes in a way that it's like makes it all okay, but it helps normalize, and we get tools on how to do life differently. So next question is, this is a good one. When is it time for the SA to put away the shame for the health of the coupleship?
Well, unfortunately, shame never goes away. I know you're not going to like that story, but as long as we have the wiring and desire to connect with other people, we're going to have a deep subconscious opposing force within us that's saying, are you sure you're enough for that? You want it. You want her or him to love you. You want her or him to forgive you and to accept you and to love you. But I don't know, you've done some really crazy, awful things. So shame's always going to be present in the coupleship. You have to be kind of a master ninja of knowing when it's showing up. So I have a lot of videos on shame stuff. I'm a certified Daring Way provider through the Brene Brown material of shame, vulnerability, and intimacy, and shame resiliency. And I'd encourage you to look at those. But the more you can actually become comfortable with understanding your shame voices, when you're in those coupleships, you can bring it into the coupleship and talk about it, because shame only builds in secrecy, judgment, silence, when you don't talk about it, when you push it down. I gave that example about sarcasm. The shame story I tell, so I'll lash out at my kids in a sarcastic way, and the shame's like, I'll just be doused in shame of like, you are the worst parent in the world. Look at that. Who talks to their kids that way? And by the way, who can love this and that mouth of yours? And if I don't talk about it and say like, what I just said and the way I said it is not cool, I'm not okay with it, and I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, that is repairing the coupleship. That is repairing the relationship, because I am the foremost expert in my own shame. And when I can talk about it, and hopefully that allows my child to learn, hey, you're right, that's not okay, someone can't talk to me like that. Hey, that's how you are accountable and own your stuff. And oh, it's okay to talk about shame. So that's actually, and hopefully from those exchanges, there's a sense of safety, predictability. We repair when things go bad. These are really important facets of building a secure, healthy relationship with another person.
I actually point lots of people towards your videos on shame, and I'm tearing up. Like, I hate that you feel like they get doused in shame and don't feel you're enough. So I mean, you are more than enough. So okay, so
I
and
love
then
Tammy, everybody.
yeah. This person writes, they keep bumping into abusive people, and I think one of the things that we, like, we can bump into them and we can know that they, I'm going to keep you at harm's, not, I'm going to keep you on my outer edge. Like, I don't have to tolerate abuse. Like, I know my worth, and I don't permit people to treat me badly. So, but there's also all kinds of good people. And if I'm always insulated and keeping away from people, you know what? I'm missing out on the good people too. And everybody's human. So even those really wonderful people, we do stuff and we muff up, and from time to time we need to own it and move on, but that gives us a chance to continue to connect. So I would shop for some new people to, like, you can find people that are on a different journey, and like I just shared, I don't choose to hang around people who aren't actively working on themselves. So I find your tribe, they're there. So
Find your tribe. That was what I was going to say, is the great antidote to unraveling unhealthy patterns and getting out of these insanity cycles you're saying I keep running into, investing my time and energy into people who end up being abusive, is often, sometimes it has to do with our trauma wiring, things that are feel normal to us, or things that we've kind of been trained to ignore, like red flags. Speaking them out to other people, whether it's again in a 12-step community, with a therapist, with other trusted people, there is a very therapeutic aha moment type thing that happens when you start relaying a story about the thing that your loved one said to you, or how he or she behaved towards you. And those are all things that help bring enough awareness to your executive functioning skills that kind of get you out of that trauma brain and trauma response, and help you make the next right decision, help you vet, right? Kind of see things for the reality and not for like, oh, but I was hoping that they would be this way. I hope that if I was kind enough to them, they'd stop abusing me. I hope if I worked hard enough in the relationship, they'd start reciprocating. And that gets you out of that cycle faster, is through a community of other people, healing through relationships.
yes, it is about relationships. So, and all of this work helps us be in relationship with ourselves and others in a very different and meaningful way. So we don't have any more questions. There was a comment. Thank you for your vulnerability, Kristin and Tammy. I so get the shame voices. So do we. So, but we don't have to, we don't have to let them.
No, the more I say them and I speak them to you all, because it's deliverance from it. Like, the more that I say I'm an awful parent, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe there's a part of me that says that to myself, because I'm here busting my ass every day trying to show up for my kids. What that really was is me being exhausted, me being in that trauma shame brain, right? And I just had a human moment, but it doesn't mean you ignore it. It doesn't mean that you skip over it and go, oh, I only yelled at them too much, or the sarcastic comment I said was not that abusive or hurting. It's you speak it out, because shame begets more shame. The more you own it, the more you are relieved from it.
So our questions only visible to you. I don't know. I mean, I'm always on this end of it. So I kind of think they might be, which is why you can ask anonymously. They are not on the recording. And obviously we don't speak out, where we hear or see them. So I don't know. But you can always ask questions as an anonymous attendee, and that manages that aspect of it. So So tonight we are out of time now. So I am subbing in on Dr. David's tonight. So for those of you that join at 5 p.m. Pacific time, I will see you then. Kristin, we will talk about step 9, which is different than step 8 next month in September. So Kristin will be back the second week of September. So join us then. But let's see, next week is Troy Love, where he talks about attachment wounds, which there's always lots of shame, with the wounding. So I would invite you to join that one as well. So thank you. I'm glad your kids are in school. Deep breath. Yeah, life is returning to more
We shall
normal.
see.
Maybe. So, all right.
Maybe.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.